bonus feature review. I'm John, the host, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jason Alt.
Hey, everybody. I'm on a podcast.
We are talking about a film that I was so extremely excited for. This is the new film from A Farewell to Kings, written and directed by Nick Zostakowski, and produced and shot by Cameron Tremblay.
You know that this is the entrance to a sacred native river? Salish shamans would send their children to raft down the river when they turned 14.
You sure you want to come along?
Yeah, no, I'm sure. It's not a big deal.
You're okay with the drugs and everything, right?
I can handle my own.
So these two gentlemen, this dynamic duo from the Great White North, these are the two filmmakers that are responsible for a very underrated horror film in Black Mountainside that came out in 2016 that Justin Thibault joined me on the Cult of Films to talk about, and man, I'm so glad he did. So this is the follow-up to that. This is Archons from 2020. It's a film that debuted in the film festival circuit in 2018. Jason, you did not watch Black Mountainside, but
I did not.
What did you think about
I went in with
Archons?
a clean palette. First of all, can we talk about how there's nothing more Canadian than a film troupe being named after a Rush album?
They
like,
nailed
was
it.
2112 films taken? I did not see Black Mountainside. I'm interested in seeing Black Mountainside. It looked like the cast of that had maybe more experienced actors, but I feel like maybe Cameron Tremblay cut his teeth on that movie because the cinematography in Archons it's spot on. It's very good. It's a very mature filmmaker behind the camera on this film for sure.
It's exactly what I wanted to see as far as that aspect goes, as far as a follow-up, because like you said, it was just technically it was the next step, and it shows real growth, and it's just so breathtakingly immersive. And it might just be because it was kind of scenery porn also, but I do want to give a lot of credit to these filmmakers because the choice to shoot everything in such a wide shot had to have been such a pain in the ass, especially doing it on the water for so long.
Natural lighting, yeah.
But
you got you got light bouncing off the water. You got light coming through the trees, so it's tough. You know, with the you always know where the sun is. It's hard to shoot at night. You know, lit the way it was. So like, hats off to them. Like the backdrop, the splendor of northern Canada, is a character in this film, right. And he really got the good side.
Yeah, it's just shooting in these dense foliage scenes. It's everything that you're like, hey, I'm gonna shoot, in these claustrophobic settings at night, or on the water. What camera should I use? Probably not a big spread out wide lens, and it's just paid dividends. I think it's so interesting to look at, and like the other film, and I'm gonna try not to say that a lot because I want to talk about Archons as its own film because it definitely deserves that. I'm so into the growth of filmmakers, and to see the same techniques kind of used as far as like his placement of the camera to show you exactly what you need to see is so effective, and it covers a lot of things that you don't want to see, or maybe they don't want you to see, and lighting choices. It's just lit so well, which, like you said, it's all natural lighting, which is super hard to do.
Yeah, from a cinematography standpoint, I was immediately impressed with this. It seemed like a very well put together film. So, like, from the opening of the film, when you see how it's shot, you're like, all right. This is a little bit more polished than some of the films we're used to reviewing. So immediately I was pretty impressed.
I always like talking drug portrayals, especially like LSD or mushrooms or anything like that. How different filmmakers portray that on the screen and how authentic it is. You and I have talked about that. It's just like a fun thing that you and I do. How do you think they did in Archons portraying the hallucinogens?
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but this film actually threw me for a loop in that regard because I was sort of like, this is not really the greatest portrayal of what an acid trip was like. But, mild spoiler alert, what they ended up taking was not LSD. So I was sort of like, all right. I mean, maybe it's a little bit like, oh, this is a drug you don't know about. So, like, of course we nailed it. But I think to make the characters feel the way they felt, how disorienting it was and how, like, they fell in love with the natural setting even more while on this drug, I think it was effective in that, like, it conveyed the point the film was making. And I initially thought it was a bad portrayal of LSD, but it turns out since it wasn't LSD, I think it was fine, and it didn't take me out of the film like it sometimes does. When someone like pops a tab of LSD in their mouth and like 5 seconds later their refrigerator turns into a Puma and you're like, all right, come on.
It's more subtle, but it's also not because of reasons. And again, go watch the film as to why. But in a completely no spoilers or as spoiler free as possible, what is Archons about, Jason?
So Archons is about a musician who meets one of his idols. And his idol is basically like, man, your music is really uninspired. And he kind of spirals a little bit after that. And he decides he wants to record a solo album. But not just that, he's finishing up a tour with his current band. And he decides that they're going to take like 5 days off at the end of the tour and just canoe down this river. From like their starting point, they'll take a 5-day trip to a cabin where their Jeep is parked, and then they'll, drive back into town. So just a relaxing way to kind of connect with his bandmates and maybe like tell them that he's going to do a solo album, but like at the right time. So he plans this whole trip for them. He gets some drugs, and everyone's going to take 1 tab a night for 4 nights, and they're all just going to like have a trip together around the fire and just, bond. The bass player decides to bring a girl that they met with them. So that sort of throws off his plans a little, but he just rolls with the punches. And, they take this trip together, and they find out what they were taking wasn't LSD, and they found out they're not alone in the woods.
On a more surface level, it's about people that, strike lightning talent-wise, and then them trying to figure out if they are truly talented. It's a lot of struggling with your inner demons of, are you good enough, and literally doing whatever it takes to get to that next level and to show what you're willing to go through and what you're willing to sacrifice. And I think those themes were perfect. I think that, if I'm going to be honest, this film is too ambiguous for most of the audience out there. A lot of people are going to turn this off and be like, I don't know what I watched, or I got this and this out of it, but I'm still very confused. It's not such a linear plot that you're just like, it's not going to spell it out for you. A lot of it, like the drugs that these people are taking, is very up for interpretation on what you're even seeing as the audience. And if you are open-minded to that kind of film, I think it's got a lot of rewarding moments for you.
I don't want to say the movie was Lynchian, because it isn't, but I think if you do enjoy the films of David Lynch and you're used to it being a little ambiguous as to what happened, like if you're okay with seeing a movie and sort of like, all right, I experienced that, but like I'm not 100% sure what happened, this is sort of like Blair Witch meets Blue Velvet, sort of, in a way.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Let's talk about the performances a little bit, because I think across the board, I don't think they were as strong as they were in Black Mountainside, but they were at least effective, and what they needed to get right, they got right. When the moments of terror were happening, that's when I believed the actors and their performances the most. I think the standout was actually a kind of a relative newcomer, Parmis Sahat, who plays April. She's seen in the 100 and the Twilight Zone series. I think she did a fantastic job. You also have Josh Collins that plays Mitch, who's also in the 100 and Supernatural. Rob Rako, Eric from Riverdale and Supernatural, and Samantha Carley, who plays Olivia, who was actually, has a lot of acting credits to her name, and also executive producer on this and Black Mountainside as well. Who do you think were the standout performances in this?
Well, I saw some criticism of this film online, saying the performances weren't great, and like, thought they were fine. These are all experienced actors. They've all done stuff on the CW, and in film, you know. I couldn't place Rob Rako the whole movie until I realized I remembered him from I Think You Should Leave, which I thought was funny. I was like, I've seen that dude's face. Definitely wasn't from Riverdale. I don't watch that, but like, so I don't think acting is that hard. So I also don't think like, oh, the acting was terrible. I didn't think it was terrible. These people have all been paid to act before. They didn't get fired from the CW, who can, I guess, afford to be a little picky. Like, Rob Rako went out to LA to be a musician, and he ended up an actor, and everyone's like, whoa, you didn't want to be an actor? But like, that's Johnny Depp's exact story. So like,
he's too good looking to be a drummer. So they're like, why don't you talk in the camera?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. Like, Jackie Earle Haley didn't want to go to an audition by himself, so he brings his musician friend with him, and they're like, oh, you're the most beautiful man we've ever seen. How do you feel about wearing 3 rings on each finger? He's like, ooh. And they're like, perfect. So, look, man, I don't think acting is really that hard. I don't think anybody really did that bad a job in this movie. It was competent. I don't think the acting was the weakness of this film.
I would say that the performances were, at least for me, probably the weakest part, but not so much the performances, but just the cohesiveness of the group. Because again, and I promise this will be the last time, but back in Black Mountain Side, you have a group of random scientists and specialists and doctors thrown together in this specific project, but you believed when someone was in peril, and you believed them all kind of like rallying together. This didn't feel as connected, and these people were supposed to be in a band and know each other for years, and I felt like, something happened, they're just like, that happened, but let's keep going. And there is plot reasons.
That was when the shit hit the fan. But like, I felt like the best scene of the movie was when Eric ran off by himself to smoke a cigarette because he was mad about the interview on the radio.
Yeah.
And Olivia came and sat next to him. They had a really good conversation, and they weren't looking at each other. They were just talking. They weren't looking at each other. They were both staring off into the distance and like having a conversation. I really bought that. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
So later on, like, I felt like they were a band, and later on, when like no one knows where Olivia is, and they're just like, well, gotta go, that felt a little weird.
Yeah.
But I think they just didn't know how to do the peril correctly, more than like it didn't feel like they cared about each other.
Right, and it's a hard thing to sell. The peril was a little bit missed, but the inclusion of the minimalistic gore and the tactile effects, again, carried over from their first film, I think was extremely effective. Again, there's going to be detractors like there were for some of the effects in Black Mountain Side, but it's just like, okay, if it's not this, then other filmmakers or in a lesser movie, they would have just put shitty CGI effects in here, very cheaply done, and it would have looked terrible. And this, you get full body suits, and you get real like settings of terror and gore, but it's not like constantly in your face all the time. It's extremely effective. Again, highlighted by such great choices with lighting and camera placement. I can't say anything about how this film looks or the inclusion of the tension that it draws. I was super impressed by all that. Like I said, the biggest thing I could think of is just the cohesiveness of the performances. The sound mixing, again, was spot on. It was very eerie. And again, there's going to be detractors for how certain things sound, like there was in the previous film, which I think, I praise it. I think it's one of its strongest suits.
So I didn't like, you're going to see the Archons, and that was something I didn't like per se. Didn't we learn from Jaws that when like the shark didn't work out as well and they showed less of it, like people were more scared? If you have to show the Archons, show them much later than they did. I think they got too much screen time, personally. Like, they looked fine, I guess they were supposed to look weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know. If it were me personally, I might have reshot the scene where the Archons come into the upstairs bathroom and Mitch is hiding,
Sure.
I feel like if you'd done it from Mitch's POV, where he's trying to hide and hold his breath, and like him just seeing glimpses while he's hiding, would have been better. And maybe that's like so cliche they didn't want to do that, but they did it from like a third person perspective of someone who's not in the room.
Right.
So I'm just nitpicking. I feel like at this point, I just would have preferred not to see the Archons. It's like, when I saw Signs.
I was just
like,
thinking Signs, yeah.
The birthday party where the thing walks by and you're like, yeah, all right.
Right. But at least this looked like there was a thing in the room, unlike Signs, or it looked like there was a piece of pixels in the room.
Yeah, they went practical effects on this movie. This is almost, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 100% practical effects. Like,
right.
It looked fine. They made good choices.
This thing is on Amazon Prime and everything. It's already won some awards too in the film festival circuit. It won Best Picture at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival in Portland. Won Best Best Actor for Josh Collins, who plays Mitch, in the Blood in the Snow Film Festival in Toronto. And again, I think that they're very well deserved. I think that this is a tactile, immersive, psychological horror with a Lovecraftian aesthetic. If that's what you're into, this is right up your alley. If you liked Black Mountainside, then definitely go see this. It renewed my hunger. After I watched Black Mountainside, I was like, God, I can't wait to see what else these young filmmakers can do. Completely renewed my hunger for the Canadian dynamic duo, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Jason, do you have any parting thoughts on 2020's Archons?
Archons is $5 to rent on Amazon. If you're someone that likes the teenagers get lost and discover an ancient evil and get picked off one at a time sort of genre, like The Descent or like every spring break movie or whatever, this isn't jump scare stuff. This isn't torture porn. This is real understated gore, and it's more of a suspense movie with supernatural elements than it is like a slasher. So if you're into like suspenseful movies, I think this is worth the $5 to rent it. I would recommend it for sure.
Everyone has all the time in the world right now. Pop this on, and it is quite a treat, if nothing else, for the scenic porn, because it is beautiful. But Mr. Jason E. Alt, where can everyone find you on the interwebs?
I am Jason E. Alt on the Twitter, and if you go to my pinned tweet at the top of my page, you will notice that I have a list of links to all the things I do around the internet.
I am Jon the Host, and you can find me on the Twitter at Jon the Host. Follow us on Twitter at film_hooligans, and we will see you all next time.